Chapter 17. Taylor sat staring at him for a moment, unsure what to say. She was attracted to Brandon, but she still didn't know how she felt about him, the man who would only work 3 months out of the year. Finally, she nodded, feeling uncomfortable. "All right." He smiled, and after the check was taken away, he covered her hand with his. "If I'm moving too fast for you, just let me know." Taylor tilted her head to one side, thinking about it. That sounded like a really good excuse. Slow is a good idea. I'm still grieving my parents, I just opened a new business, and I've moved to a new state. Too much right now might easily overwhelm me. She wasn't being completely dishonest, because life was a little overwhelming at the moment, but once Alyssa's wedding was over, she was sure she'd be all right. "I'll keep that in mind." At Costco, they shopped together, needing many of the same things. They piled case after case of pop in the back of the truck, and she was sure people were watching them, wondering what they could possibly do with so much pop. When they finished packing the truck, she handed him the keys. "Would you mind driving back?" He shook his head. "I'd be happy to. I'd have driven here if you'd asked." "I know you would have." On the way back, she grasped for any topic she could think of so as to avoid the topic of going out with him. As much as she felt for him, she just wasn't sure she was ready for that. Besides, she'd decided to never marry. "What time do you think you'll be at the house on Saturday for the wedding?" He shrugged. "I need to be there early enough to cook everything. I'm sure I'll have everything marinated before I come over, but I'm dying to use your kitchen." Taylor grinned. "Lauren is doing as much as she can ahead of time and freezing it. She wants to let you play in the kitchen. I think we can probably share." He frowned for a moment. "Am I invited to stay for everything, or am I just the guy making tacos?" "Oh, dear. We haven't discussed that, have we? We want you to stay. There's going to be snack foods and dancing all afternoon and into the evening. We're not serving a true sit-down meal, but there will be enough food for everyone. We have a band coming as well." "Do you dance?" He shrugged. "I've been known to dance on occasion." "Well, you'll have to save at least one dance for me," she said softly. "I will do that with no problem. I think you're very dance-worthy." When they arrived back in Richland, he drove to the Band B and helped her carry everything in. "Do you mind if we drive over to my place? I can walk home and get my truck, but that seems like a waste of time to me." Taylor was still unsure where she stood with him, and she wanted to drag one of her sisters along, but she knew that would make things even worse. Instead, she hopped in the truck with him, and they unloaded his purchases. "You seem to have a better idea how much to make every day now." He nodded. "I never have leftovers anymore. If anything, I'll be a little short, and I'll stop early. But if I've sold out my entire inventory, I've made a lot more than I need to that day." Taylor shrugged. "Makes sense." It was hard for her to believe that the same man who was currently working 12-hour days 6 days per week was going to spend 9 months of the year vegetating. She could see that he had the same strong work ethic she did, so it made no sense he wouldn't work year-round. Thinking about it made her head hurt. Once everything was unloaded at his place, she asked, "Are you coming for supper tonight?" "If I'm invited." "You're always invited. Even you can't live on tacos alone." Brandon grinned. "I'm not so sure about that." They drove back to her place and went in through the kitchen door. "How were things while I was gone?" Taylor asked Lauren. "Oh, just hunky-dory. I have supper almost ready, so if you guys want to make yourselves useful and set the table, that would be fabulous." Taylor immediately took out some plates and handed them to Brandon. "How many are eating tonight?" Lauren took a moment to count on her fingers. "Alyssa and Nick won't be here, but Amanda will, so 3 sisters." And I guess there's a Brandon for guests, and one more who will need a to-go container. So, 8 place settings? Taylor pulled out 2 more plates. You deal with those. Yes, ma'am. Brandon carried them into the dining room and began setting the table, while Taylor pulled out glasses and cutlery. Whatever you're cooking smells amazing, Taylor said, trying not to drool. It's a new recipe I'm trying. King Ranch chicken is what it's called. I'm drooling as I cook. Lauren looked up and saw Mr. Mystery standing there. It's not quite ready, Mr. Thibodeau. Fine. I'll wait. He sat down at one of the bar stools in front of the island and waited. How has your day been? Lauren asked. Taylor listened to everything, trying to stifle a giggle. Lauren always tried to talk to the man, but he never responded in a way that pleased her. He just didn't talk about himself. Very good, actually. I figured out something that's been bothering me a lot, and now I can move forward. Mr. Thibodeau seemed very pleased with himself. I see. Do you want to tell me what you do upstairs every day? Are you an FBI agent? The man sighed. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that I'm not, Miss Romriell. I would appreciate it if you would quit asking me that question. All right. So, if you're not an FBI agent, are you a serial killer? I'm not even going to answer that. The oven beeped then, and he nodded toward it. I do believe dinner is ready now. I'll take mine in a to-go container and get out of your way. Taylor looked up and realized that Brandon was standing perfectly still beside her, listening to the conversation. They were both in the dining room, where they couldn't be seen from the kitchen. At the look on his face, she bit her lip to keep from bursting out laughing. Every time, she whispered. I can't believe she came right out and asked him if he was a serial killer. No one can. Taylor shook her head. I don't know why he hasn't yelled at her yet, but he just answers her questions and takes his food. They heard Lauren's voice again. I do hope you'll be at the wedding on Saturday, Mr. Thibodeau. One of my sisters is getting married here on the property. I don't know about going to a wedding of people I don't know. His voice sounded like he was confused. He'd even been asked. You know me. I think you should come and dance with me. Is there going to be loud music? He asked, sounding a little annoyed. Yes, of course. So, there's no point in hiding yourself away upstairs. You need to come to the wedding and dance. He sighed. I'll be there. I take it no meals will be served that day other than breakfast? Only at the wedding, Lauren said happily. I suppose I have no choice. Brandon shook his head at the conversation in the other room. That man is strange, but I think Lauren might be even stranger. Taylor nodded emphatically. I'm not a matchmaker, but I want Lauren and Mr. Mystery to figure out a way to happily ever after. Their relationship already amuses me. Imagine them with children. Brandon bit back a laugh. You are sadistic, Taylor. I think I like that about you. You do have good taste. She winked at him as she walked back into the kitchen. What can I get you to drink, Mr. Thibodeau? I'll take 2 Cokes, please. Taylor grabbed them from the fridge and put them in front of him as Lauren put his to-go container in front of him. After he was gone, Taylor shook her head at Lauren. You're not allowed to ever ask the guests if they're serial killers again. House rule. Words you never thought your sister would say, Lauren mumbled as she went back to fixing supper. After supper, Brandon asked Taylor if she'd go for a walk with him. Taylor looked at Lauren. I usually help clear the table and do the supper dishes. Amanda shook her head. I'll help her tonight. You go have fun. You deserve a day off. Taylor could hear the matchmaker in her voice. So does Lauren. Taylor said. Then you do the breakfast dishes tomorrow, Amanda suggested. Now go. Taylor looked over at Brandon. I guess I'm going for a walk with you. Good thing. He led her to the back door and opened it, then walked down to the beach, starting their walk to the north. We always go south, toward my house. It's time to see what's north. Taylor shrugged, unsure about being alone with him when she was uncertain what she wanted to do, but she figured it wouldn't kill either of them. As they walked, their arms kept brushing, and he took her hand in his. Okay, he asked. Not yet. The answer came out quickly, and it must have sounded harsh, because he dropped her hand and turned to her on the beach. I'm not sure exactly what you want from me, Taylor. I said I'd take it slow, but we've been flirting with each other for 3 weeks now. Holding hands after 3 weeks isn't exactly going quickly. She took a deep breath. Let me sleep on it. I honestly felt like we were hanging out as friends until you bought my lunch today. I'm not sure what I want from you either. Can I tell you tomorrow? Come over for supper again, and we'll walk and I'll have an answer for you. He nodded. All right. I don't want to wait, but I never do. I'm more of a rush headfirst into danger kind of guy, and you're a think everything out carefully and make charts about each thing that could possibly happen kind of girl. I know we think differently, and I'm not going to get mad at you for not being like me. That would never work for either of us. Taylor smiled up at him and nodded. You know me well. I do. So, you do your thinking, and give me my answer tomorrow. He turned and kept walking up the beach, telling a story about a couple of brothers who'd gotten into a fist fight over the last taco he'd had for the day. They both laughed, but their minds were on other things. Chapter 18. Brandon was bummed as he walked back to his place alone. He thought that he and Taylor were making strides, but she obviously didn't have feelings for him. Or she was unsure about her feelings, but how could she be unsure? When he looked at her, he saw a future, and she looked at him and saw a question mark. What was up with that? He went straight to his garage and did the thing he'd been doing since he was a small boy when he was feeling lost at sea. He got out his remote-controlled boat and put it on the lake, taking a seat on the dock beside his boat. And he made the boat zoom around, under the dock, and back to him. Why it calmed his nerves so much to play with the thing, he didn't know. As he was playing with it, he spotted Mrs. Jackson, his landlady, walking toward him with a boy. The boy must have been around 10. He was a towhead and very gangly. His shorts were too short, and that did nothing to make him look any more like his peers. The boy stopped and pointed to the boat, talking to his grandmother, too softly for Brandon to hear. Mrs. Jackson smiled. Brandon, my grandson is fascinated by your boat there. Would you be willing to tell him about it? Brandon nodded. Better yet, I'll let him pilot the boat. I have another, and I'll go get it. When the boy was sitting beside him, Brandon showed him the controls. Do you think you have it? When he nodded, Brandon jumped up to go to the garage. Mrs. Jackson followed him. Thank you for taking some time with him. His father just left, and he's feeling a bit lost. Having something fun to do with a man your age will be good for Gideon. I'm happy to race with him and show him my boats. I'm a bit of a fanatic about remote-controlled boats and have been since I was around Gideon's age. Would you mind walking him back to my house when you're done? I'm not feeling well tonight, and I'm not sure I should be out in the cold night air. You know I'd do anything for you, Mrs. Jackson. Brandon leaned down and kissed the old lady on the cheek. I'll have him to you as soon as he knows everything there is about boating. She laughed softly. You're a good boy, Brandon. With that, she set off for home, and he noticed she was moving a little slower than usual. He hoped whatever was wrong was nothing serious. He walked back to the dock with the other remote-controlled boat in his hand and sat back down on the dock. I'm going to walk you home when we're done. Your grandmother was missing your grandpa. Gideon wrinkled his nose. She's the only one who can like him. He's grumpy. Well, that's not fun. Brandon threw his boat in the water and started driving it. So, are you staying with your grandparents all summer? Just for a couple of weeks. My dad left, and Mom is all upset, so she sent me here. I like the lake, but I miss my friends. Where do you live? Brandon asked, trying to get the boy to open up. He wished he could tell the boy about his women troubles, but he didn't think that would be appropriate. Burley. I think we're going to have to move, though. I'm sorry. I'm glad you get to run away to the lake, though. I grew up not far from here in Bennington, and my mom brought me to the lake all the time in the summers when I was growing up. I would always play in the water some, but my favorite thing to do was play with my boats. Gideon smiled at the boats in the water. These same boats? Brandon laughed and shook his head. No, the boats have changed many times over the years, and I've had more and more expensive boats. These two are my favorites. And you still play with them? Aren't you too old to play with boats? Brandon sighed. I only pull them out when I'm having a rough day. You had a rough day, too? Yeah, but mine involves a girl. Gideon laughed. Girls are nothing but trouble. You are so right. I need to push them all out of my life and forget about them. Me too. Except my mom and grandma. Well, I really want to keep this one girl around, but she's the one that hurt my heart today. Brandon didn't know why he was telling this kid so much, but maybe it would help him sort things out. Did she dump you? Gideon asked, his eyes wide. Nope. Because we weren't going out yet, so she couldn't dump me. I guess you could say I've had a crush on her for a few weeks now, and I tried to hold her hand tonight, and she told me she has to think about how she feels about me. What else has she been doing the past 3 weeks? Gideon laughed. She's probably busy doing grown-up stuff. Well, yeah, but she could have thought of me a little. She will now, and she'll tell you how she feels when she's done thinking. You can wait. Brandon bumped against Gideon with his shoulder. Who taught you to be so smart? I guess I was just born that way. After he'd left Gideon at his grandparents' house, Brandon walked slowly home, thinking about everything Gideon had said. The boy really was smart. What did it hurt him to wait a day or two to find out how Taylor felt? He was thinking forever, and it made sense that she had to think about things. They'd make things work between them when they talked after supper. He knew they would. God wouldn't be so cruel as to dangle the perfect woman in the world for him right in front of his face and then not have her feel anything for him. It just couldn't happen that way. No, we're going to be like the sappy ending of a rom-com. She's going to come running into my arms and tell me she can't believe she didn't see how she felt long ago. I know it. He had a smile on his face as he started prepping meat to cook overnight. So much to do before he saw her again. But life was going to turn out just fine. Chapter 19. Taylor went to Alyssa's room between breakfast and check-in for the day the following morning. She needed to talk to someone, and Alyssa was always the best for that, for whatever reason. When Taylor walked into Alyssa's room, she was a bit astounded at the sheer amount of disarray. Alyssa was normally a very organized person. What are you doing? Alyssa sighed. I'm trying to decide what I need to have here and what needs to be moved to Nick's. The more I can move now, the better it will be later on. She shook her head. I'm not looking forward to the move, but I'm sure looking forward to being married. I can understand that, Taylor said. Need some help? That would be wonderful. Alyssa pointed to a pile on her bed. All that is ready to be packed up. I didn't think I'd be moving quite so quickly. Hey, you're the one who wanted a quick marriage, Taylor said, forcing a smile. Alyssa looked at Taylor for a moment. You look like you've had a rough night. Want to talk to me about it while we work? You've always been able to see right through me. Taylor took the printer paper that was there to wrap things in and got to work. It's Brandon. No way. I'm shocked. I did not see that coming. Oh, shut up and listen to me, would you? Taylor didn't mind the teasing, but at that moment, she needed real advice. Sorry. I'm listening. What happened? Well, at lunch in Pokey yesterday, he paid for my meal. He said he'd been wanting to ask me out forever and he wanted it to count as a date. I'm sure I had a deer in the headlights look, because he then told me he'd been worried about moving too fast for me. I grabbed onto that excuse with everything I had. Why? Alyssa asked. Any idiot can see you two are attracted to each other. What makes you think you need to keep pulling away from him? Taylor sighed. Let me finish. So last night, he asked me to go for a walk with him on the beach, and as much as I love our beach walks, I said that I needed to help Lauren with the dishes. But of course, Amanda, being the sweet sister she is, said she'd do them so I could just go. Alyssa grinned. She's only nice when you don't want her to be. Isn't that the way of sisters? Taylor asked. Anyway, on our walk, he took my hand, and I asked him to wait a little while. I have to get my feelings for him sorted, and I could tell it hurt his feelings, which is the last thing I wanted to do. I told him we'd walk tonight and I'd give him my feelings on the two of us dating. Why are you holding back? He's a great guy. We all love him, and it's obvious you have some pretty strong feelings there. Why is it even a question? Taylor wrapped 2 knickknacks carefully and put them into the box. Have you been listening to him about his plans? She asked. He's working all summer, and he's obviously working a lot of hours. Alyssa shrugged. But he doesn't want to work other than those 3.5 months out of the year. He says he's going to spend the rest of the time drawing. What kind of goal is that? Alyssa frowned. That does sound a little odd, but have you asked him about what he's going to do with his drawing? Maybe he has been commissioned to draw for a magazine or something. He obviously has a strong work ethic. Taylor sighed. I don't want to get mixed up with a man who would expect me to support him, like Tim. I want a man who knows how to work. Closing her eyes, Alyssa shook her head. You can't let my past mistakes keep you from finding love. That would be ridiculous. Brandon works hard as you do. He's not going to just stop working after tourist season. You can tell. I still worry. Well, stop. If worry is keeping you from a man who is obviously perfect for you, then there's something wrong. Taylor finished packing the box and carefully taped it shut, writing on the outside what she'd just packed into it. I don't even know if I want to be in a relationship. Do you realize that I have never dated? Not even in high school. I was working at McDonald's, and I had a babysitting business as well. I spent every night and weekend either flipping burgers or babies. Alyssa shook her head. Of course, you don't know what you're looking for, then, but as an innocent bystander, I have to say what you're looking for is Brandon. He's well-mannered, kind, hard-working, and so sweet on you, it gives the rest of us cavities. Give him a chance. Saying you'll go out with him or hold his hand does not mean you are contractually obligated to marry him. I'm just worried I'm making a mistake. You're not. I can tell you that now. Go out with him. Go see a movie. Just walk on the beach. But do it with an open heart. Let him kiss you so you can see if he makes your toes curl and your eyes roll inside your head. Taylor laughed. Is that what Nick does for you? Absolutely. I figured this close to my wedding, I'd be nervous about my wedding night, but I'm eager for it. He's pretty wonderful, and I want to spend my life with him. Alyssa sat down for a moment, curling one leg under her on the bed. It wasn't like that with Tim. I had no interest in going any further than a peck on the cheek. He made me feel dirty, which sounds weird. I never should have gotten involved with him. I don't even know how it happened now, and I'm glad I don't ever have to see him again. Oh, did I forget to tell you? I invited him to the wedding. Taylor grinned at her sister. Alyssa slammed her shoulder into her sister, trying to knock her onto the floor. You'd better not have. Taylor grinned. Thanks for the pep talk. I'm going to think about what you said. You think too much, Taylor. That's always been your problem. Me? You're the perfectionist who had to make a perfect score on your real estate exam. Taylor's protest was weak, though, because she knew Alyssa was right. She did tend to overthink everything. Okay, so we're both crazy in different ways. Just don't think about it too much, because I don't want him to move on to someone else while you're still sitting there thinking. Taylor nodded, sighing. I guess I'll have it figured out by supper. We're going for another walk after, and I need to have an answer for him by then. I think I really hurt his feelings last night, and I never intended to do that. I know you didn't. Alyssa hugged Taylor. Just know that we're all here for you, hoping for whatever is best for you. I know that. Taylor walked off then, wondering what to do. What Alyssa said did make sense to her, but was she ready for an actual relationship? She just wasn't sure. All day as she did her work, Taylor's mind was on Brandon. When the taco boat arrived, she wanted to give Lauren money to get her what she wanted, but she couldn't be that cowardly. She had to do the right thing. She walked to the taco boat, and she asked for what she wanted, and then she handed Brandon the money to pay for it. You still on for that walk after supper? He asked. Taylor nodded, not sure if she was ready for the talk they needed to have or not, because she was still grappling with her emotions. Are you coming in for lunch? If I'm invited, I am. Guests aren't eating with you, are they? Taylor shook her head. Well, maybe Mr. Mystery. She looked toward the house and spotted him walking toward the lake. There was no way he was going to do something as touristy as swimming or boating, so she was pretty sure he was getting tacos. Won't he just take them up to his room? Brandon asked. Probably. Unless Lauren starts tormenting him about being a hermit again. She's determined to figure out his secret, and she's scaring all of us in the process. Taylor shook her head, moving out of the way. You're going to love these tacos, Mr. Thibodeau. I need a break from sandwiches for lunch every day, he said. And maybe a break from your sister asking me if I'm a serial killer. That gets old after a little while. Taylor took a deep breath. I'm so sorry she asked you that. I've asked her to back off and leave you alone. Thank you for that, but I have a feeling Lauren is the type of person who doesn't walk away when she's curious about something. It doesn't seem to be in her nature. You're right about that. Lauren is tenacious. I would have said incredibly nosy, but I suppose tenacious works. He stepped up to the window of the taco boat, and Taylor disappeared into the house. Brandon joined her a few minutes later, having had to fill a couple more orders in the meantime. I managed to refrain from asking if he was a serial killer or an FBI agent, he whispered to Taylor. Did I do good? Taylor laughed softly. I'm very proud of you, Brandon. Without thinking about what she was doing, she reached out and patted his hand. As a spark of energy shot through her at his touch, she drew her hand away. You don't have to pull away, Brandon said. I'll hold hands with you anytime you want. Taylor simply blushed and didn't respond. She was still uncertain how she should respond. Thank you for your kind offer. I'm here for you. All you have to do is ask. He winked at her as she applied herself to her tacos, wondering what she should say to him later. She didn't want to lose his friendship, but she wasn't sure how she felt about more. Chapter 20. Brandon spent his afternoon selling tacos and fretting about how Taylor was going to decide. She had seemed nervous around him at lunch, and he wasn't sure if she was nervous because she planned to tell him to take a hike or because she was interested in him. He found himself moving a little slower than usual. He got off at 6, or when all of the tacos were sold, and he didn't want to sell them all so he could delay the inevitable. On his last trip around the lake, he saw Mrs. Jackson standing beside Gideon. He stopped at the dock in front of them. "I bet you're hungry, aren't you, Gideon?" Gideon shrugged. "I'm always hungry. No one thinks I should eat as much as I do. That's part of being a boy your age. I remember that feeling of never-ending hunger. What's your favorite? Beef? Chicken? Pork?" Gideon shrugged. "I like all of them." Brandon made Gideon 4 tacos, and when Mrs. Jackson went to pay him, he held up a hand. "It's on the house, or I should say on the boat. Do you want any, Mrs. Jackson? Are you feeling better today?" Mrs. Jackson gave him a tired smile. "I'm all right, I think. I'm just feeling my years." "Do either of you want a pop?" he asked. Gideon took one, which was no surprise to Brandon, and he pressed a bottle of cold water on Mrs. Jackson. "If you need someone to take you to the doctor, you just give me a call." She smiled at him. "You're a good boy, Brandon. I keep telling you that." Brandon looked around carefully, dropping his voice to a whisper. "Just don't tell anyone else. I don't want to ruin my bad boy image." She laughed as he waved goodbye and headed to the next dock. He had enough meat for a few more tacos, and he'd be done for the day. And it was just past 5. He didn't want to be at the Romriell house too early, and he considered going home and changing first, but if she was going to like him, she needed to like him for who he was. As he went along, he couldn't quit thinking about what his reaction should be if she told him she couldn't date him. Should he keep being her friend and hope she'd change her mind? After a bit, he decided that was the right answer. He hadn't become her friend just because he wanted to date her. No, they were friends first, and hopefully more would come of it, but if it didn't, he couldn't keep his friendship from her. When he'd finally sold the last taco, carnitas, he headed toward the Band B, seeing that it was after 5:30. He wouldn't have too long to wait until supper, and he could actually do something good while he was there. Maybe he'd set the table. Maybe he'd talk to Lauren about her seasoning. Something. He didn't have to stand around staring at Taylor with a lost puppy look on his face. He docked the boat and walked up the sidewalk toward the house, stopping when he spotted Nick beside the gazebo. "What are you doing?" Brandon asked. Nick shrugged. "I didn't realize until today that there need to be flowers around the gazebo, and they need to look like Alyssa's mother planted them, whatever that means. I got some purple and pink flowers like all the others, and I'm just hoping they're good." "Those sisters sure keep you on your toes," Brandon said, shaking his head. "They do. But trust me when I say they're worth it. Every one of them is special in her own way. I got the prettiest and the smartest, so you can pick from my leftovers." Nick grinned at Brandon. Brandon laughed. "I think Taylor is the prettiest and smartest, and I'm just praying every day that she'll be willing to date me." "Have you asked her yet?" "Sure. She had to think about it." Brandon shook his head. "We've been flirting for 3 weeks, and she has to think about things now? I don't even know what to think about that. I don't know what to tell you. Just that she's worth whatever she puts you through. If I convince her to go out with me, sure. What if she keeps acting like she has no idea what I'm good for?" Nick shrugged. "I'd say to stay the course. She's too special to give up on. I promise." "All right." Brandon had already made that decision on his own, and Nick's words just reinforced it. "What's for supper tonight, anyway?" Pot roast, mashed potatoes, and carrots. Fresh bread, as always. And some sort of mystery dessert. Lauren wouldn't tell me what it was when I asked. That one's a mess. Did you know she asked the guy who hides in his room all the time if he was a serial killer? Doesn't surprise me one lick. That girl has serious issues. Nick shook his head. She's fun and lovable, though. And did you know she has a liberal arts degree? Brandon shook his head. A liberal arts degree? Are you kidding me? They both laughed as they walked up to the house. Brandon stayed in the kitchen while Nick wandered off looking for Alyssa so she could tell him if the flowers were done to her specifications. What can I do to help? Brandon asked Lauren, who was in the kitchen, as usual. He was glad Taylor wasn't there. Set the table for me. We have 9 eating with us, including you, but not including Mr. Mystery. Brandon walked over and took down 9 plates. He worked on setting the table, having no problem taking orders from Lauren. When he'd finished setting the table, he walked back into the kitchen for more to do. Next? Lauren frowned. She pointed to a cookie sheet full of dinner rolls. Put those in the bread basket. Brandon was in the middle of dropping the bread into the basket when Taylor came into the kitchen. How can I help? She asked. Lauren looked around. Pour the gravy into the 2 gravy boats, one for each end of the table. Taylor walked to a cabinet and reached up for the gravy boats, but she couldn't quite reach them, even on tiptoe. Brandon walked up behind her and grabbed them, setting them on the counter in front of her. Thanks. You're welcome. You need to work on being taller. He told her with a smile. Taylor turned and frowned at him. You know I'm done growing, don't you? Oh, well. Then you're always going to be that small? He asked. Taylor wrinkled her nose and walked around him, carrying the gravy boats. He finished with the bread, and they both walked into the dining room together to put their things on the table. I think your size is cute. I could carry you in my pocket. Taylor glared at him. No teasing me before supper. Fine. Can I tease you after supper? I should be a lot less grumpy then. Hangry does not look good on me. She turned and hurried back into the kitchen. What did you make for dessert? Lauren shrugged, a grin on her face. You can find out when everyone else does. Get drinks. I have a list of what everyone wants there on the counter. Just fill glasses, and put the little card I made on each plate. Look, who's getting so fancy? Taylor said. I don't think I let you use my printer this way. Romriell House's printer, and my name is Lauren Romriell. Lauren turned her back to Taylor and continued cutting up the roast beef. At 6, people poured into the dining room. I've been smelling this all day, one of the guests said to the woman he was with. Brandon hoped it was his wife, but there was no telling. Lauren was still in the kitchen while people were dishing up their meals. Brandon could see her from the dining room table. She was putting a meal into a takeout box, and she put that into a bag, and then something else, dessert he guessed, into another takeout box, and then some bread, and then she added napkins. No wonder Mr. Mystery was happy to get to-go boxes. Lauren went all out for them. She took 2 Cokes from the fridge and set them next to the bag, and then went to the table. I hope everyone is enjoying supper tonight, she said. No one really answered because they all had their mouths full. Brandon had made sure his chair was next to Taylor's. He wasn't at all surprised when the people at the table had seconds and then thirds. They needed to charge more for supper. They were getting good meals for their $7.50. He decided to talk to Taylor about that on the beach while they walked. Dessert was a lemon cake with raspberry lemon frosting. It was absolutely amazing, and Brandon had 2 pieces without even thinking about it. When he was finished, he balled up his napkin on his plate. Lauren, that was the best meal I've had in a very long time. You are amazing. Lauren smiled. Thank you, Brandon. I made it myself. Did you have a recipe for that frosting? Or did you come up with it on your own? I started with a recipe for lemon frosting, and I experimented from there. I had a flavor in my mind, and I made it match. Lauren seemed excited by the attention over the meal. I'll help you do dishes tonight, but then I'm taking Taylor for a walk. Alyssa shook her head. Nope. I'm doing dishes, and Amanda's helping me. You two go for your walk. We'll see you later. She stood and started clearing the table, and Amanda got up to help. Brandon couldn't argue with them. All right, then. No dishes. Just walking. He looked into Taylor's eyes. You ready? Taylor took a deep breath and nodded. I think so. I'm as ready as I'm going to get, so that's ready, right? He laughed and headed for the back door. Thanks for inviting me for supper tonight. It was amazing, and I think you guys are undercharging. I would charge at least 10. You're the one who didn't want to charge more than $1 a piece for his tacos. Taylor said in protest. But I listened to you, and I make $2 a taco now. He walked toward the beach and headed south. Hopefully going the other direction would bring him luck. Chapter 21. Taylor was more nervous than ever as she and Brandon walked toward his house. The taco boat was at their dock, as it was often. How were your sales today? She asked. He shrugged. I sold out of everything, so I'm going to assume I made good money. I never sit down and do my accounting until the end of the day or sometimes the following morning. That sounds good. You really think we should up our supper prices? She asked. Yes, I really do. Brandon walked a few more feet before he brought up the subject she was trying her very hardest to avoid. You said you'd spend the day thinking about where you want our relationship to go. I need to tell you something before you even tell me what you've concluded. What's that? She was willing to talk about anything as long as they could put off the subject that she was afraid to discuss. I want you to know I'm willing to continue on as friends if you don't think it's time for a relationship. Taylor smiled softly. I'm glad. But, after much consideration and a heart-to-heart with Alyssa, I think I'm ready to move on with being more than friends. Really? He stopped walking and turned to face her on the beach. Are you sure? I've never had a boyfriend before, which is weird considering I'm 28. Even when I was in high school, I was too busy working to really date, so, there you have it. I'm scared because this is all new to me. He took her hands in his. I'm glad you told me that. It really does help me understand you a little better. Well, don't think you know me too well. It will mess with my head. She grinned up at him. I'm sorry to leave you hanging for so long, but I didn't know what else to do. I was so unsure of myself as soon as you said that you were interested. I was happy flirting with you as long as it didn't become more. Because I had no idea what to do when you were interested. She hoped what she was telling him made sense. She was still apprehensive about the relationship thing. Let me hold your hand when we walk on the beach. Let me take you out for supper on Sunday evening. Dance with me at the wedding on Saturday night. I'm not asking for a whole lot from you. I think I can do all of those things without losing my mind. Slow and steady, right? He nodded, keeping one of her hands in his as they kept walking along the beach. See? You're not even dying from it. Not yet. We probably need to be careful, though. He laughed. Oh, I figured I'd get to your house around 8 on Saturday. Then we can have the food ready well before the wedding. That sounds perfect. Breakfast will need to happen that day, but we don't have a lot of guests. Just Mr. Mystery. I closed down booking for that weekend as soon as I knew Alyssa was getting married. I figured it would make the weekend smoother for all of us. We have a full house coming in Monday again, though. Taylor shrugged. I'll take Sunday to do my Pocatello run, and we'll go to supper. With only Mr. Mystery there, I can take the day mostly off. You're going to leave Lauren alone with Mr. Mystery? Are you sure that's wise? He asked. She laughed. Now that she knows she's not allowed to ask him if he's a serial killer, she should be fine. How many rules does Lauren actually follow? The one she likes usually, and she is fond of calling Mr. Mystery a serial killer. I'll make sure Amanda is watching her all day. That might be smart, he said with a grin. Taylor was surprised just how much she enjoyed walking along with him, hand in hand. It wasn't like they'd declared never-ending love for one another, but they had moved to a different level of their relationship, and it did feel good. So, do you have any big plans for your day off? She asked. I thought I'd go to Pokey with you and maybe even take you out to dinner, if you don't think the meal would kill you if I was the one to pay for it. You tease me almost as much as my sisters do. I'm not sure how I like that. If you want me to stop, I will, but then how will you know that I like you? She laughed, shaking her head. Maybe you could find other ways to show me that you like me. I guess I could try, he grinned at her. Are you okay with me going with you Sunday? I really do need to grab a bunch of stuff. Of course. You don't need to ask, and you know it. Just let me know what time. She didn't particularly like to make the drive alone, and he was good company. Besides, it meant they got more time together. I'll tell you after the wedding. I think it depends on how late I sleep. Do you think it'll go late into the night? Honestly, we're planning to be done by 7 or 8. It won't be a late night thing. You found a band? He asked. Yeah, Hannah helped with a band, and she's making the cake, though Lauren is making the icing. I can see them doing the frosting and putting the topper on together. And Hannah is the maid of honor, and the rest of us are all bridesmaids. I didn't know you guys all knew Hannah so well. Well, yeah. She and Alyssa have been best friends since before kindergarten. She's practically a sister. In fact, my parents left her money when they died to help her open her bookstore. We don't really tell people that, though, so don't mention it to her. I think that's really cool. I knew her in high school, along with everyone else in the valley. She's super sweet and has always had an amazing work ethic. I remember she worked after school while the rest of us were hanging out with friends. I always respected her. Taylor smiled at that. Just before I walked down the beach and met you, I was writing my name in the sand with a stick. Hannah and Alyssa taught me to write my name that way in that same spot. It's strange how being here makes all the memories come back. Did you have a special friend you were always anxious to see, like Hannah? He asked. Unfortunately, no. I had my sisters and my cousins, and I thought Hannah was my personal friend, too. Seriously, we all love her and embrace her as an honorary sister. I think that's cool. That house is amazing. I can't imagine growing up going there every summer. Taylor nodded. The day before my parents were killed, they called Alyssa and told her they were selling the house, and Alyssa was so upset, she called all of us, and we had a big all-day meeting at her house, trying to figure out how to keep them from selling. We decided to beg them to keep it as an Airbnb, but we were going to wait and all go over there in person to talk to them about it as soon as they got back from the lake. Within an hour of me leaving Alyssa's, the police were there to tell her they'd been killed in a car wreck. She stopped walking and went over to sit at the table outside his house. Then Alyssa got to call all of us. I still have this ache inside me when I think about what we lost that night. My parents were amazing, and I hate that you don't get to meet them. And Alyssa doesn't get to be given away by Dad. It's really hard to wake up every morning and know we can never again go to them for advice. He took both her hands in his and brought them to his lips. I had no idea you were still hurting so much. Taylor nodded, sniffling a little. Yeah. I have a hard time thinking about it, if that makes sense. There we were, having a little party as we laughed and thought up ways to keep the lake house in the family, and they were about to die. Was it your idea to do the band bee? Taylor nodded. Of course. We talked Alyssa into breaking it off with her deadbeat boyfriend, and then we all sold our houses and came here. I still can't believe we just changed our destinies that way, but it's what we all needed. The sister time has been amazing. We lean on each other more than I ever thought we would. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be running a bed and breakfast at Bear Lake, I'd have laughed. Now, I can't imagine doing anything else. And you're content? She shrugged, smiling a little. I'd like to do a whole chain of band BS in the area. This one has to pay for the remodel first, though. It was pretty darn expensive, and I'm not sure how much of my sister's money I can keep spending. I'd like to run my own, though. I mean, I love working with them, and no one really contradicts me on anything, but if it were mine, I wouldn't even have to think about talking to them. I could just do whatever I wanted and move on with my life. And would Lauren go with you? I think Lauren has found her spot. I'd have to do breakfasts myself or, better yet, hire someone to cook and help clean. I don't think I could run one on my own, especially if I was still overseeing Romriell house. She smiled at him. What about you? Thinking of expanding to 2 taco boats next summer? He laughed. I don't think I'll be doing more than 1 taco boat ever. I can't pilot 2 of them, and what I do is pretty much a one-man operation. I like it that way. He shook his head. When I was a CPA, I had 3 assistants, and we all worked together. I was raking in money, but I wasn't happy. I think working hard is important, and so is money, but I don't think anyone should do it if they can't be happy at it. If that makes any sense at all. Of course it does. Besides, if you were still a CPA, I never would have gotten to meet you. And think about all the tacos I would have missed out on. He grinned. Let me walk you back. It's getting late, and I have prep work to do for tomorrow. I might need to add a day off during the week, but I'd really rather not. I just start feeling like a zombie by Thursday afternoon. I can see that, but I bet you can do it all summer. Taylor was a little surprised when he put his arm around her waist as they walked, but she said nothing. It felt good to be snuggled up against him on the cool evening. Lauren definitely wants you to help out 1 morning per week after the tourist season. She was really excited when I offered. I figured she would be. That kind of schedule is hard to keep. Taylor nodded, yawning. Tell me about it. If we weren't planning a wedding, too, it wouldn't be so bad. Is everything ready for that? She shrugged. The dresses are ready. I think the flowers are ready. I have no idea where Lauren is with food, but I'm going to trust her on that, because she's been showing us what a trooper she is. He stopped at her back door and looked down into her eyes. Taylor bit her lip, wondering if he was going to kiss her. And then something hit her. She wanted him to kiss her. Instead of waiting to see what he'd do, she took a step toward him and raised her lips to his. His lips met hers, and she felt as if fire was shooting through her veins. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders and sank into the kiss. When he finally raised his head, she whispered, "Good night." "Good night, Taylor. I hope you have an idea of how special you are." She smiled and hurried inside, closing the door behind her. All 3 of her sisters were in the living room, obviously waiting for her. Taylor frowned at them. Do I have paint on my butt or something? While they laughed, she went upstairs to shower. She wasn't going to tell them anything. They'd just tease her more, and Brandon felt too special to talk about. Even to her sisters. Chapter 22. The whole household was crazy for the next few days. Kayla arrived on Tuesday, just before noon, and no one had expected her until Thursday. When she walked into the house, she spread her arms wide. "I'm done. The house is on the market, and it's ready. So, I'm here for good." Lauren hurried from the kitchen to hug her. "I'm so glad, because Alyssa's going to have to give up her housework, and you're getting to clean the bathrooms and vacuum the upstairs every day." Kayla laughed, which surprised Taylor a little. Kayla hated housework. "I'll happily do it, because it means I'm a member of the family again, and I get to live here." She had set her bags on the floor, and she hugged Taylor next. "We're happy you're finally here." "Me too. Now, what else needs to be done before the wedding?" Taylor shrugged. "Lauren's on food. I think that's the last thing that needs to be worked on. Grass could use a good mow and a weed eat. If you want to conquer the weeds in the flower bed and make sure the gazebo looks perfect, then you can report to Alyssa, because she'll probably have something for you to do." "Is she in charge this week?" Kayla asked, her eyes growing wide. "Just until her wedding." "How are things with the hunky taco guy?" Kayla asked. "He's still bringing tacos for lunch every day," Taylor responded. Lauren came back from the kitchen at that. "But they went for a really long walk on the beach last night, and she came in and asked if there was paint on her butt, and we all know what that means. Taylor and Brandon were kissing on the beach, and she won't talk to us about it. How are we supposed to live vicariously through our sister if she won't give us details?" There were 2 toots from the taco boat then, and everyone scrambled to get their money. Alyssa slid down the railing of the staircase, and Taylor looked at her with shock. "I think Nick makes you a little bit younger every day." "That's a good thing." Alyssa pulled a box of Junior Mints out of her pocket. "Weddings are stressful. I don't know what I was thinking. We should have eloped." Nick walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "It's not too late. I'd elope tomorrow if that's what you wanted." Alyssa sighed. "Too much work has been done to elope now, but I think we should all elope. Now that we have a gazebo, we can just get someone here to officiate." "There's no waiting period in Idaho," Taylor said, winking at Alyssa. "That's a great idea." Alyssa linked her arm with Taylor's as they headed for the taco boat. "I think you and Brandon should consider that when it's time. We're nowhere close to considering an elopement." Asterisk. When Taylor and Alyssa got to the boat, with Nick trailing after them, Alyssa asked Brandon, "If you thought she'd agree, would you marry Taylor in our gazebo tomorrow?" Brandon grinned. "Straight to the point, aren't you, Alyssa?" She nodded. "Yup. I am." He made the tacos he knew she would order and passed them through the window, giving her the price. "I can't take these or pay you until I have an answer." "Does it have to be an honest answer?" Brandon asked. "Yup." "Then, yeah, I would. But I know Taylor wasn't ready to hear that, so you probably just ruined my burgeoning relationship with your sister, and now I'm going to die old and alone, because I won't have her at my side." Taylor wrinkled her nose. "Yup. She blew it. It's been nice knowing you, Brandon." "I knew it." He made Taylor's tacos quickly, and then made Nick's. "You're not with the right sister today." "I am, but she's with Taylor, so I'm with them both." Nick shrugged. "Eloping is a good idea when it's your turn. Alyssa is so stressed over this wedding, she's stressing me out, and I'm pretty happy-go-lucky most of the time." Brandon made his own tacos and walked back to the house with Nick. "You getting nervous?" "Not at all. I'm just ready for her to be mine." Nick shrugged. "What about you? How did things go with Taylor last night?" We're giving dating a try. We talked for a long time, and I think we both feel comfortable with where we are at the moment. Good. I'm glad you two worked it out. I know Alyssa was concerned about how things would go between you. Brandon shrugged. So was I. I think we're good, though. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. It was too new and special. He moved next to Taylor at the table, and they sat close. Just as he'd peeled back his foil, Mr. Mystery came down. Am I too late to get tacos? He asked. Brandon got to his feet. Nope. Come on. I'll get them for you. As the two of them walked toward the boat, Brandon said, You're making Lauren crazy, trying to figure out what you do in your room all day. Mr. Mystery smiled a little. Yeah, I know. It's great, isn't it? That's the most interest a girl has shown in me in years. Brandon laughed. You're deliberately making her crazy? Well, I wasn't at first, but when she started accusing me of being a serial killer, I had to. What's your real name? I just know Lauren calls you Mr. Mystery. The man laughed. That's ironic. I'm Justin. Why is that ironic? Brandon asked. If I told you, it would ruin my game with Lauren. Sorry. She has to figure it out on her own with no help. It'll make her crazy, but she's making me crazy, so we'll be even. Brandon got his tacos and a couple of Cokes, and they walked back up toward the house. You should eat with us today, Brandon said. No one expects you to, and it would make Lauren go insane, trying to figure out why you were doing it. Justin grinned. Then that's exactly what I'll do. When they got inside, Brandon went back to his spot beside Taylor, who was already on her third taco. He heard the hush around the table when Justin took a seat beside Lauren. I love these tacos, he said. Lauren looked at Justin with wide eyes. What are you doing at the table? You always eat in your room. The panicked expression on her face had Brandon ducking his chin so no one would see he was trying to conceal his laughter. Not always, apparently, because I'm eating here. Justin calmly peeled the tin foil off his tacos and bit into one. I think tacos are meant to be enjoyed with others. Don't you, Lauren? Sure. But you don't eat with people. You're a reclusive FBI agent who kills people in his spare time. Lauren, Taylor said, shaking her head. I've told you, you can't accuse the guests of being serial killers. You never let me have any fun. Lauren bit into her fourth taco. Kayla looked between Lauren and Taylor, looking confused. I'm not even going to ask what's going on here, because I'm afraid it might scar me for life. Taylor grinned. Mr. Thibodeau, this is our fifth sister, who has just moved in today, Kayla. Kayla, this is Mr. Thibodeau. It's really nice to meet you, Mr. Thibodeau. I hope you're enjoying your stay at Romriell House. Oh, yes. It's lovely, and my view of the lake is spectacular. Lauren looked at him strangely. You know your room has a view of the lake? I'm not blind, Lauren. Well, you couldn't be. You have to be able to shoot well. I'm not responding to your accusations again. Justin continued eating, but he ignored Lauren from that moment on. Will there be tacos on the day of the wedding? Brandon shook his head. Sorry. I'm going to be making tacos for the wedding, so you can have some, but I won't be selling them from the boat. I see. I'm afraid I'm disappointed, but I guess that means I will have to go to the wedding. Lauren nodded emphatically. You promised me a dance. I did no such thing. Sure you did. So, you have to dance with me. Justin wadded up his foil and got to his feet. I'll be down for supper at 6. He looked at Brandon. You're right, of course. My coming to lunch did make her a little crazier than usual. I'll have to keep that form of torment in my back pocket just for her. With that, he turned and headed back to his room. Asterisk. Taylor laughed harder than anyone else. You're brilliant. She pressed a kiss to Brandon's cheek, surprising everyone. She had started to tell him she loved him, but she was afraid of saying it. She felt like that was the direction she was going, though. If only he had bigger plans for himself. As he went back to his boat and she got back to work, her thoughts were only on Brandon. When they would next spend time together. What it would be like to dance in his arms at the reception. What it would be like when he kissed her again. She went and cleaned the Harry Potter room, her thoughts staying on topic. The only topic there was Brandon. As she cleaned, she thought about how full of life she felt since his kiss the night before. How she felt as if she was walking on air. She hadn't expected this at all. Was she getting in too deep? She scrubbed the bathroom and took out the trash before stripping the bed. Whether she was in too deep or not, she was all in, and that's what mattered. She only hoped Brandon was all in as well. Chapter 23. Alyssa thought of a few more specific things she needed for the wedding the following morning, so she and Taylor got into the truck and made the hour-and-a-half drive to Pocatello. Kayla was dealing with some of the outdoor maintenance on the house, while Amanda had promised to help Lauren with anything that came up inside. As they drove, Alyssa talked a mile a minute, which was unusual for her. "You're getting really nervous," Taylor finally said. "Did something happen?" Alyssa shook her head. "No, nothing happened. I just keep thinking about how my wedding would be different if Mom and Dad were still alive. Nick's parents are coming up from Arizona, and they're staying at Nick's house. We're going to take off and go to Yellowstone right after the wedding. It's a 4-hour drive, so I think we can make it before we need sleep. I can't think of anything I'd rather do than hike Yellowstone with the man I love. Those are some tough hikes. Remember when Mom and Dad took us to Yellowstone when we were little girls?" Alyssa laughed. "And Lauren couldn't handle the smell, so Amanda stayed in the car with her, and they both kept their noses plugged the whole time. I thought they'd both lost their minds. They missed out on seeing the beautiful geysers for a little smell." "Who would do that?" "Lauren and Amanda. Weren't you listening?" Alyssa turned to her sister, watching her as she drove. "Tell me how your talk went with Brandon. I can see you decided to take my advice, but where do things stand?" "We're taking it slow, but we're officially going out. He's taking me out on Sunday night after our weekly pokey run. I'm glad you got a truck you don't mind driving with as often as you're making that drive." "Well, it's usually only once per week, unless one of my sisters has an emergency." Taylor smiled. "I really don't mind, though. This is probably our last chance for a good, long sister-to-sister talk before you're married." Alyssa shook her head. "Who would have thought I'd be the first to marry? And to a good man? After Tim, I think everyone thought I was incapable of finding anyone decent to even talk to. I'm so glad you found Nick. He really is right for you. We could all see it even before you could, I think." Taylor glanced over quickly. What is he going to do now that Kayla is back? She can handle the last of the renovations. Hannah's close to breaking ground on the bookstore. She said she'll be ready for him by the time we get back from our honeymoon. You're the only person I know who wants to hike difficult trails on their honeymoon. Well, you and Nick. We're both active. I still run every morning." Alyssa shrugged. "I love doing outdoorsy stuff. You know that. You're more of a beach girl, but I like to do it all. Nick shares the same loves, so we're going to explore them. Do you need anything else to get ready for the wedding?" Taylor asked. "Anything at all? While we're in Pokey is a good time to look." Alyssa shook her head. "I don't think so. More than anything, I needed to get away for a day, because I'm slowly going insane sitting there waiting for the big day. I want those strange plastic forks that look real and some of the small clear plates for people to eat from, but those aren't necessities. Getting out of the house was a necessity. I can understand that. Taylor pulled into the parking lot of Abracadabra, a small restaurant there in Pokey. I'm buying you lunch, and we're going to talk about Mr. Mystery and how he made Lauren crazy by eating with us yesterday. That was amazing. Alyssa happily jumped out of the truck and followed Taylor inside. Once they were seated and had ordered their drinks, she said, I couldn't believe he did that. Did Brandon really put him up to it? Taylor nodded emphatically. He said he couldn't think of anything funnier, and when he suggested it, Mr. Mystery jumped at the chance to bug Lauren. She's been annoying him since he got there, so he's taking a strike back where he can. Well, I thought it was amazing. Nick and I laughed about it when Lauren wasn't around to hear us. I don't think she found it nearly as funny as the rest of us did. I don't either. Taylor picked up her phone. I want to text Lauren and make sure she doesn't have anything else I need to get while we're here. Her thumbs flew over the keyboard on her phone as she asked, and then she pulled out her notebook. I'm going to make a list of what you want at Costco. Add stuff or correct me if I get anything wrong. I want those little chocolate-dipped cookie dough bite thingies. All right. For the wedding or to eat between now and then because you're nervous? I didn't think about for the wedding. Ask Lauren if there's room for those things, because I love them. Are we all going out for your bachelorette party? I haven't heard a peep from Hannah about it. Nope. We're staying at the house, and we're going to watch rom-coms and eat as much junk as we can poke into ourselves. I had them leave an extra inch in the waist of my wedding dress, just in case I overindulged too much. Taylor shook her head. As much as Tim tried, he couldn't make you a health nut or make you anorexic. I think anorexia was his goal, so he could completely control you. Alyssa wrinkled her nose. Let's not talk about Tim. He's out of my life, so there's no reason to constantly bring him back with our conversations. Absolutely. Do you think you and Nick will stay in the house he built? I'm honestly not sure. I want something bigger, and he knows it. He's talked about adding on, which would be easy for him, or he could build something new, or we could buy something, and he could keep that as an Airbnb, which is my idea. You're not going to move this year, are you? Alyssa shook her head. Probably not until babies start coming. Do you want kids right away? Taylor was surprised to think about it. Alyssa had always been such a career woman that the idea of her wanting children as soon as she married was a bit baffling. We both do, Alyssa said with a grin. I'm 30, and he's 32. We want to be young enough to enjoy them. And I want at least 5 little girls, so they can have sisters to love, just like I did. Great idea, Taylor said. I guess I wasn't thinking about you being over 30, since I'm still in my 20s and fresh as a daisy. Sure, you are. You're only 2 years behind me, and when you hit 30, you're going to feel that baby itch, too. I sometimes already do, Taylor admitted. I always thought I'd be single for the rest of my life and never have kids, and now I imagine having little Brandons hanging around. What is wrong with me? You're falling in love for the first time in your life, and I think it's amazing. You need to have children with Brandon. I just still worry about his work ethic. What kind of man only plans to work 3 months out of the year and draw the rest of it? That makes absolutely no sense to me. Alyssa took a deep breath. I think you should ask him, and if you don't want to do that, then trust him. Maybe he has ideas to build a restaurant or something. Maybe he's planning on doing taxes. Cut him some slack. You have feelings for him, and that's obvious. Why are you borrowing trouble with this? Taylor nodded. You're right. I know I need to put this topic to rest and move on with my life. Maybe if he showed me one of his drawings or something and I knew he was good. Maybe you need to just trust in the man you love. Would you find a man who was perfect for you in every way except that he had no work ethic? I really don't think so. Let it be. How did you get to be so wise? I'm the oldest, so when Mom died, she transferred all of her wisdom to me. Alyssa shook her head. Do you have any idea how I wish that was true? I'd take a fraction of her wisdom. Or even better, her and Dad here for just one more day to see that we're all working together to build a business. Wouldn't they be proud? Chapter 24. On Friday evening, the sisters sent Brandon and Nick away to go do something else. They didn't much care what, because they were celebrating their sister's wedding. Just before they left, Brandon went and asked Mr. Mystery if he'd like to go to the bachelor party with them. After his initial surprise, he agreed, and the sisters and Hannah had the house to themselves for a few hours. Hannah brought with her 4 large pizzas from Bear Lake Pizza Company, and they spread them out on the counter. Each of them grabbed paper plates and pop from the fridge, and they went into the living room to eat their pizza and talk. Mom would be mortified if she saw us with pizza in here, Lauren said. Alyssa shook her head. For special occasions, they let us eat in the living room. If the day before my wedding isn't a special occasion, I don't know what is. You have a point. Taylor took a big bite of her pizza. I'm trying to decide if I like this more or Studebaker's over in Montpelier. Remember when Dad would take us there? Hannah smiled, lazing back into the sofa. Someone tell me that we're going to have a beautiful day with no rain tomorrow. It's been so chilly lately, I'm almost worried about how cold it will be for the wedding. If it gets that cold, we'll move inside. World won't end. Lauren made a face. Taylor, why did Brandon ask Mr. Mystery to go with them tonight? You'll have to ask Brandon. I think he was just being friendly. The guy obviously needs friends. I guess. Lauren shrugged. Now, tell me what it's like to kiss our taco guy. Taylor choked on her pizza as she felt her face turning red. Really? While I'm eating? What makes you think I've kissed him? I mean, I let him kiss my fingertips once, but I'm a lady. Sure, Lauren shook her head. Amanda, what do you think the odds are that Taylor and Brandon have never kissed? Zip. I saw her blush. They've kissed, and she liked it. I think there's going to be another wedding around here before too long. Amanda took a drink of her Sprite, watching Taylor blush again. Taylor turned to Hannah. How are the plans for the bookstore coming? I want to hear all about it. Oh, the plans have been finalized by the architect, and we break ground on Monday. They hope to have the frame up by the end of the month. Nick is joining the construction crew as soon as he gets back. And there's going to be a bakery inside? Taylor asked, refusing to be teased by her siblings for another minute. Yes. Absolutely. Hannah was warming up to the subject. I'm actually partnering on this with 4 friends. One will be the bookstore manager, one will be the childcare manager, one will be the baker, and the other will make the daily soups and salads. I had this idea years ago that young mothers need to have a place to chill and buy books. So the kids will be dropped off in an open area in the middle of the store that's visible from everywhere. If not perfectly visible, then there will be closed-circuit TVs, and no mom will ever have to worry about her kiddo. The mom and the kid will both have sensors put on their clothes, so mom can't go to lunch with her friends and leave her kid. The childcare will be free if the mom purchases $20 worth of books. If not, then it's $2 an hour. It's cheap, and there will be toys and people watching them. And then, of course, there will be snacks and lunches and baked goods and specialty coffees. I can't wait. Taylor smiled. That sounds amazing to me. Let me know if there's any way I can help. Once you're open, I'll add you to my coupon book, and you can offer a free cup of coffee with a book purchase or whatever works for you. Alyssa took a couch pillow and whacked Taylor over the head with it. You will not turn my bachelorette party into a business meeting. Do you understand me? But I'm so much more comfortable when I'm talking business. Are we watching raunchy movies? Kayla asked. Lauren asked me, and I didn't know. Lauren whacked Kayla with a couch pillow. I told you not to tell anyone I was the one who wanted to know. Hannah laughed. No raunchy movies. I thought we'd vote between You've Got Mail, The Princess Bride, and Notting Hill. But I'm not sure I can sit through Notting Hill with Alyssa one more time. She keeps telling me that she's found her will. She's been obsessed with that movie since high school. I vote for Notting Hill. How can I get married without watching Notting Hill the night before? You guys. I need Notting Hill. It's a physical need. Alyssa had a pleading look on her face, and everyone quickly capitulated. You're the guest of honor, Taylor said. I can sit through Anna and will one more time. Maybe. I do think Alyssa should get to pick the movie, Lauren said, no matter how many trillions of times she's forced it on the rest of us. Taylor picked up everyone's paper plates while Hannah got the movie set up. I think this time, Will is going to refuse to go out with Anna, and she's going to be left brokenhearted, Taylor said. When she got back in the living room, Alyssa threw another pillow at her. Stop that. We have to keep this place nice for our guests. And we can't be up too late, because I have to be up to make breakfast for the most mysterious man in Bear Lake, Lauren said. Taylor rolled her eyes. He doesn't eat until 10. Well, I have to get all the snacky foods ready for the wedding, too. What time is Brandon going to be here? I think he said 8. If not, he said 7 or 9. You should really ask him, because I'm drunk on root beer and I'm not thinking straight. Taylor hugged a pillow to her and settled in for the movie, wishing Brandon were there. They hadn't seen as much of each other as she would have liked that week, because he was busy, and she was busy, and she missed him. They watched the movie together, with only one intermission to get everyone junior mint ice cream and so everyone could run and potty. When Taylor came back from the bathroom, she found Hannah with her head stuck in the hidden passage behind the large screen TV. I wondered if you'd sealed it off. Taylor smiled. I never could. If we ever get a kid between 6 and 12 here, they're getting a map. Not a lot of people take kids to bed and breakfasts, it seems. I think they all want to rent a house. Hannah closed the passageway off. Someone needs to do a good cleaning job in there. That's on my list for this week, Kayla said as she brought her ice cream into the living room. I still feel like I'm doing something incredibly naughty eating in here. Amanda sat down with her legs curled under her. I got my first Bear Lake client this week. I'm going to decorate her Airbnb in a way that she won't feel disgusted when she has to stay there. She said the last part with a snooty accent, and the others laughed. She sounds like someone I would love to work with, Kayla said. Oh, I can't wait to start the project, Amanda said with a grin. Soon, I'll be able to choose my own clients like I did in Salt Lake City. I was more interviewing them than they were interviewing me. Alyssa walked back into the room with a goofy grin on her face. I just got the sweetest text. Because it's your wedding tomorrow, we'll humor you, Amanda said. What did the sweet text say? Nick said he was glad this was the last night we had to spend apart, and he couldn't wait for me to be his wife. So sweet, Taylor agreed, rolling her eyes at Lauren, who stuck her finger down her throat. We're just glad to get rid of you. Alyssa wrinkled her nose. I don't care what you say. I'm in love, I'm getting married, and I'm happy. She got to her feet and started a loud rendition of I Feel Pretty from West Side Story. Hannah laughed. You should be singing "I'm Getting Married in the Morning" from My Fair Lady instead. Can't you figure out which musical number should be performed at which moment? Have you lost your mind? After a few minutes, they settled back down to watch the second half of the movie, and Taylor noticed Alyssa's lips moved along with the words. She had seen that movie one too many times, and there was no doubt about that. After the movie, they cleaned up their mess. Which room is mine? Hannah asked. We put you in the Princess Bride, Taylor told her. You get to sleep with the man in black. I know I'm having good dreams tonight, Hannah said. We should have had a Notting Hill room, Alyssa said as she wandered toward the stairs and up to her room. Taylor led Hannah to her room upstairs. Here you go. You get to be next door to Alyssa. Good. Then I can intrude and bother her in the morning. Sounds good to me, Taylor said. If you need anything, let me know. Like I've never slept here before, Hannah said with a smile. I feel like I've gone back in time 20 years. And tomorrow my best friend gets married. It's hard to come to grips with, isn't it? Very. Taylor smiled. Sleep well, and I'll see you tomorrow. The big day is at hand. I'm glad she and Nick hit it off so well and she finally feels pretty. Even though it was the wrong song choice? She can't be perfect in everything. Taylor closed the door and went to her own room. She got to spend the entire weekend with Brandon, and she hoped nothing happened to interfere. Chapter 25. By 8 the following morning, the Band B was filled with activity, between people getting ready for the wedding and people getting the food ready for the wedding. Lauren made a French toast casserole for anyone who wanted some, but no one seemed to be eating at the same time. Brandon worked side by side with Lauren and Hannah. Hannah was there to help frost the wedding cake. They had found a wedding cake topper with a man with a hammer over his shoulder, and it had been customized with Nick's last name, Piot. Brandon half-watched what the women were doing as he made up a dozen half-sized tacos, with tiny little tortillas he'd made. He arranged them all in a circle and then covered them to keep them warm. I can put some of these on the boat if I need to, he said. Lauren shook her head. Everything is done baking. Turn the ovens on warm and just shove them in. They'll be fine. He shrugged, moving on to make another tray and then another. There would be enough tacos for everyone to have some by the time he was done. He made his queso in a huge crock pot, choosing to leave the chips in the bags for a bit so they wouldn't get stale. He chopped up the vegetables for his salsa, planning to serve that with the tacos. Then he texted Taylor to come and eat with him as he served himself a plate of the French toast. Taylor approached the dining room table with a plate of the French toast and sat beside him. How was the bachelor party? We went to Max's bar, played darts, and shot pool. And ate amazing chicken fingers. I like that place, but I'd never been. Apparently, it was a remodel project of Nick's a few years back, and it's a favorite hangout of his and Ryan's. You know Ryan? She asked. Nick's friend had stopped by the Band B a few times, and they'd all met him, but none of them knew him well. Sure. He was on the high school football team with Nick and me a million years ago. I haven't seen him much since high school, but the Valley isn't a huge place. Everyone knows everyone else. She nodded. That makes sense. I guess it's just different from how I grew up. Sure. You grew up in the city and not the Valley. The Valley is an amazing place to just be a kid and enjoy yourself. He shrugged. I know Ryan and Nick have been best friends forever, and Ryan was orphaned in high school, and he moved in with Nick's family. I was a year behind them, and we didn't hang out much, but I knew them both. And you approve of Nick for Alyssa? Do you know anything we should know about him? Brandon shook his head. Don't you think it's a little late to ask that? What are you going to do? Sneak her out the window? Taylor's eyes widened. You know something? I don't know anything that would make him a bad husband. He had a kind of messy breakup from what I've heard, but I'm sure Alyssa knows all about that. I'm sure she does. Taylor took a bite of her breakfast. Lauren amazes me a little more with her cooking every day. She's really good. But don't tell her I said that. I heard you. Lauren called from the kitchen table, where she and Hannah were still working. What's for breakfast? Mr. Mystery asked grumpily. I'll get it for you, Mr. Thibodeau, Taylor said, getting to her feet and going to the kitchen. She dished him up some on a plate. I think you should eat with Brandon and me. Taco boat guy? Yup. Taylor grinned. You two dating? Brandon listened carefully to see how she'd handle the question. It was so new for them that he wasn't sure she wouldn't shy away from it. We are. What do you think of that? I think if you want to date him, you should. You've been walking on the beach every night it doesn't rain. He might as well get some kisses out of it. Justin took his plate into the dining room and sat down. I would eat down here more often if it wasn't littered with Lauren. He raised his voice on Lauren's name, knowing it would annoy her. Lauren cooks for you, came the reply from the kitchen. Don't make her poison you. I know more about poison than she'll ever know, Justin grumbled under his breath. Brandon exchanged a look with Taylor. Ignore her, Justin. She's just trying to get your goat. She has my goats and my sheep. Saucy little thing. Taylor laughed out loud. I like you, Mr. Thibodeau. Then you should probably call me Justin. Only Lauren has to keep being formal with me, because she's so annoying. I have no desire to call you by your given name. And you may call me Miss Romriell, Lauren called back. Taylor kept eating, wondering why the two of them just couldn't get along. Brandon is making lots of tacos for the wedding today. I know all about the wedding. You have to remember I was at the bachelor party with Ryan, Nick, and Brandon last night. I know everything there is to know about the thing. Justin didn't seem like he was being snotty, just speaking fact. And Brandon couldn't quit talking about you last night, Taylor. I think he's as love-struck as Nick is. Taylor looked at Brandon. Really? You talked to Justin about me? I'll never be able to show my face in my own home again. Well, he didn't get really personal, just talked about his plans for your first date tomorrow night. I probably shouldn't be talking to you about all this, but if I had to listen to it, then you do, too. Justin shrugged, seeming to be happy with himself. I think you should let the man have some secrets, Taylor said, not looking at Brandon. She was obviously embarrassed. I'm glad you'll be at the wedding, though. I know Lauren would like a dance. Sure I would. Lauren responded. Lauren, if you want to be part of this conversation, get your butt in here. As soon as Taylor said it, she looked like she was going to cry. I need to go see if Alyssa needs any help getting ready. She hurried away without another word, leaving her dirty bowl on the table, which was very unlike her. Brandon couldn't figure out what had just happened. Lauren? Lauren popped her head in the room, and her face looked ashen. Yeah? What just happened? Lauren sat down at the end of the table, a sad look on her face. Taylor just quoted Mom. She was always telling me to get my butt in a room instead of yelling across the house if I wanted to be part of a conversation. I'm going to bet it hit her just as hard as it hit me. Brandon rubbed his hands over his face. Do you think she's really off helping Alyssa? Or is she hiding somewhere? She's probably in her room, crying her heart out. Would it hurt if I went and checked on her? Lauren shook her head. Up the stairs. Third room on the right. Brandon finished his breakfast, took his plate and Taylor's into the kitchen, and put them in the dishwasher, and then he hurried up the stairs. As he climbed, he heard Justin say, "I'm sorry about your parents." There was no response that he heard from Lauren, but it didn't matter. His first priority had to be Taylor. When he got to the room in question, he knocked on the door, and a voice yelled, "Come in." Taylor was lying on her side on the bed, still in the shorts and t-shirt she'd been wearing at breakfast. She never looked toward him, so he walked in and sat on the side of the bed. "Lauren told me that you quoted your mother." It hit her really hard, too. Taylor rolled over and looked at him, obviously surprised to see him there. "I figured you were Lauren." "Nothing like Lauren." His hand stroked her hair away from her face. "Are you all right?" Taylor sniffed and rubbed her hand over her eyes. "Mostly. I'm usually okay, and then something little hits me, and I feel like I'm going to cry for a month or 6 all over again." He softly stroked her arm. "I'm so sorry you still hurt so much." Taylor shrugged. "We all do. I was supposed to have lunch with Mom when she got back from the lake on Monday. She was going to meet me at Chili's. And she never could. I'm sure that makes it harder for you. You had unfinished business with her." "I was going to tell her about my dream to open a band B. I'd been saving money for it but hadn't found a house yet. And I was so excited to tell her, because it was a dream of hers that never came true." She wiped away another tear. "I'm sorry to be so emotional." He pulled her into his arms and just held her. "Never apologize. You lost your parents. You should be emotional about it." For a long while, they sat there with their arms around each other while she cried on his shoulder. Chapter 26. By 2, Taylor had dried her tears and transformed into a bridesmaid. As soon as she was ready, she went into Alyssa's room to watch her transition into a bride. Lauren did her makeup, and Amanda did her hair, just as they had done for her first date with Nick. Her hair was in an elegant updo that showed off her prominent cheekbones. There was no questioning it, Alyssa looked stunning. Once she had stepped into her dress, Taylor's breath caught. "You look so beautiful." Suddenly, she remembered something and jumped to her feet. "I have something from Mom for you to wear." She rushed from the room and came back with a delicate pearl choker. "Mom wore this on her wedding day, and it was in my possession so I could have it cleaned when the accident happened. So, I thought you might want to wear it." Alyssa reached out and took them, her eyes sparkling. "I can't cry. Lauren just did my makeup." She sniffled loudly. Lauren shrugged. "Sure you can. It's all waterproof, and even if you do manage to mess it up, I'll fix it when you're done." Taylor took the necklace back from Alyssa and walked around behind her, putting it around her neck and fastening it. Kayla stood up from where she'd been lounging on Alyssa's bed talking to Taylor. "Alyssa, I don't really go in for the girly stuff, but I have to say, you have never looked more beautiful. Mom would be so proud of you." Alyssa sniffed again, and Lauren hurried and got her a tissue. After delicately blowing her nose, Alyssa said, "When I found out Mom and Dad had died, I thought my life was over. And then I realized that you all embody them in every way. I didn't really lose them, because they live on through all of us." Lauren burst into tears, and then Taylor and Amanda joined her. Kayla looked like she was going to be able to resist for just a moment, but then her tears began as well. She walked closer to Alyssa and threw her arms around Alyssa and Taylor, who were the two sisters standing closest to her. Lauren yelled, "Group hug," at the top of her lungs, and for once, Taylor didn't remind her they were in a business establishment. No, a group hug was needed. It probably should be a quiet group hug, but there was a wedding about to happen. Taylor took a deep breath. "I didn't think it was possible to get through it all either, and I'm still hurting, a lot. But having my sisters at my sides as we go through this journey, well, it means the world to me. I can't think of anything wonderful to say, And I should be able to, because I'm a liberal arts major. Lauren wailed the end of her sentence. Amanda cleared her throat. I love all of you so much, and I'm so glad we pulled together out of the worst tragedy of our lives, and it brought us closer. Thank you for being my sisters. They stood for a moment with their arms around each other, and then Lauren pulled away. Now I have to fix the damage Alyssa did with all her crying so I can get ready for the wedding. The food is done, and there are people here to serve it. I got confirmation the band was on their way a few minutes ago, Amanda added. They all knew it was a local band, so they could show up at any moment. Kayla went to the window and looked out. I see Nick outside pacing with the pastor. I think we need to step it up a notch before he totally ruins the lawn. Alyssa walked to the window and looked out at Nick. Yes, we need to hurry. He looks like he's in panic mode. Does Nick have a panic mode? Kayla asked. He seems so laid back. You very rarely see it. Oh, there's an older couple walking toward him. Must be his parents. I want to run out there and meet them, but Nick isn't supposed to see me before the wedding. Oh, what do I care about silly superstitions? I'm going down and meeting them. You need your makeup fixed first, Lauren said, waving a makeup brush in the air. Taylor put up a hand. How about if I go out and get them to come in and meet you? Well, that sounds like a logical solution. Alyssa shrugged. I'll go down to the living room to meet them. They don't need to climb the stairs. I don't think they'll care, Taylor said. Wait in the family room when Lauren is done torturing you, and if they don't want to come up, I'll call you to come down. Fine. I'll wait there. You're bossy. Alyssa made a face at Taylor. Be careful. You're getting married in 45 minutes, and you don't want your face to freeze that way. Taylor rushed out of the room, down the hall, and past the family room to the stairs. She took the stairs 2 at a time, though she wished she had the nerve to just slide down them like Alyssa had a few days before. Taylor walked outside and toward the gazebo Nick and Kayla had built for the wedding. It was hard to believe they'd pulled everything together so well. Nick was talking with his hands jammed in his pockets. Taylor walked past Brandon, trailing her fingers across his arm on the way. When she reached Nick and his parents, she smiled. Hello. Nick looked at her and nodded. Mom, Dad, this is Taylor Romriell. She's Alyssa's sister, and she runs Romriell House. It's so nice to meet you both, Taylor said in her best professional voice. Alyssa is threatening to come outside to meet the two of you, and I made her stay in. Would you be willing to meet her before the wedding? Mrs. Piot nodded excitedly. I would very much like that. Are you all right climbing stairs, or should I have her meet you down? I'm trying to keep her hidden until the ceremony is ready to start, and she was cooperative until she saw you with Nick. We're both fine with stairs, Mr. Piot said. We'll be back in a minute, son. We need to meet this marvel of a woman you're marrying. Taylor walked with his parents toward the house. I'll show off a little of the work Nick has done for us while we walk. My sister Kayla worked on the gazebo with him, specifically for the wedding. I like the idea of having other weddings there, too. She opened the front door of the house. Nick built this little welcome center for us. It's been more useful than I'd imagined it would be. We're mostly shut down for the wedding, with only one semi-permanent guest here until the end of September. She led them into the kitchen. This is a complete overhaul. I have before pictures. Nick did such a good job. His father ran over and ran his hand over the cabinet. Custom cabinets. My boy has some serious skills. What did you do for a living, Mr. Piot? Taylor knew his parents were retired. I did maintenance for the school district. Went wherever I was needed. I was a teacher at the local elementary. Mrs. Piot smiled. I'm getting together with some of my teacher friends while we're here. I'm glad the wedding is during summer break. Okay, if I show you any more, Alyssa is going to be annoyed with me. Taylor had started to say that Alyssa would strangle her, but it was just something she said. His parents didn't need a bad impression of Alyssa before meeting her. The house has 2 stairways, one at the front and one at the back. There are also a couple of secret passages you can use to go from floor to floor. I remember when they were building this house, Mr. Piot said. We all watched it go up, and we were so curious about the people who would live here. We were hoping for year-round residents. Taylor shook her head. I wasn't quite born yet, but my mother was pregnant with me the first summer they came here. Alyssa was around too. She calmly climbed the stairs in front of them. Alyssa was waiting at the top of the stairs. This is my sister Alyssa, but I'm sure the wedding dress sort of gave that away. Mrs. Piot didn't hesitate as she walked over and hugged Alyssa. I know you lost your parents recently, and I want you to know. I plan to be as much your mother as I am Nick's. Now, don't you make me cry again, Alyssa said with a smile. My makeup was just done and then redone 5 minutes later. Mrs. Piot laughed. I hope your mascara is waterproof, because if you're anything like me, you'll be crying all day. Mr. Piot held his hand out to Alyssa. It's nice to meet you. I'm just glad I finally have a daughter and she's not that awful Cammy. I didn't think Nick would ever come to his senses and get rid of her. Mrs. Piot put her arm around Alyssa's shoulders. Let's get to know each other quickly. You go on back to Nick, Frank. I'm going to talk to my new daughter. Taylor watched as Mr. Piot walked back out to his son. She couldn't believe how envious she felt of Alyssa's new mom. She was happy for her sister, but oh so sad for herself. She went into her room to touch up her makeup, wanting to leave Alyssa alone with her future mother-in-law.